Thank you all for coming out and spending your evening with us tonight. I'm an environmental economist. I'm here with Carbon Washington, and I want to tell you about the revenue neutral carbon tax effort that we are launching this year. So many of you saw the articles in the Seattle Times last week, and there have been lots of questions about how the work that we're doing and the campaign that we're working on relates to the governor's bill and the governor's push. And so I want to address that at the very start and put out this idea that we see ourselves sort of as being the relief pitcher. Okay? In other words, there's a starting pitcher, and then there's a relief pitcher. So we're not opposing the governor's policy. We're not in competition with the governor's policy. What it is that our ballot measure is the relief pitcher for the governor's legislative route. That's how we see ourselves. Okay? And we all know the legislative route is very challenging. And so we think that we wish the governor the best of luck in that, but we're preparing a ballot measure campaign to step in. And so the strategy that we have is that we're going to file an initiative to the legislature. That's coming in March, so in 2 months. And we're going to collect 315,000 signatures by the end of the year. That's going to put it before the January 2016 legislature. It's going to put our proposal before the January 2016 legislature. They either have to pass it, and we think there's actually a chance that they will pass it, or they're going to put it on the November 2016 ballot. We've raised about $100,000 in the last month. We've hired co-directors for our campaign. Both of them are here tonight, Duncan Clausen and Kyle Murphy. So we have a terrific amount of momentum going. And as someone who's been involved in this effort for many years, it's very exciting to see that building. So what is our proposal? Here it is in a nutshell. It's very similar to the British Columbia carbon tax that's been working successfully in British Columbia since 2008. We have a carbon tax on fossil fuels. That's going to generate a pile of revenue, and then we use the revenue to reduce existing taxes. So it's 100% revenue neutral. Most of the revenue is going to go to cut the state sales tax by a full percentage point. So in very broad strokes, to a first approximation, what the policy does is folks are going to pay a few $100s more a year for fossil fuels and a few $100s less a year for everything else. We also have portions of the policy. We're going to fund the Working Families Rebate, which is an earned income offset, earned income tax credit type policy that benefits low-income households in the state. And we're going to effectively eliminate the B&O tax, the business tax for manufacturers in the state. That's going to address impacts on energy-intensive manufacturers, especially trade-exposed manufacturers. And the carbon tax rate is going to slowly go up over time to maintain revenue neutrality over time. So that's our policy in a nutshell. If you're interested in seeing how this is going to affect your particular household, I want to promote a project that we worked on with some folks in the computer science department here at the university. There's the website, carbon.cs.washington.edu. You can actually go to the website and enter some information about how much you earn. It'll estimate your sales tax savings, and then you say how much gas you use and how much do you fly and what's your zip code, and it figures out who your electricity provider is. And it'll actually tell you at the end, it'll give you a number that says, look, this is how much you win or this is how much you lose from the policy. Super terrific, especially if you're into really wonky things. It's a great tool. I love the calculator, and I'm very grateful to the folks in the computer science department who worked on that. I want to emphasize that this is a bipartisan effort. So we have letters of support on our website, carbonwa.org. From economists around the state, we have letters of support, including a number of economists here at the University of Washington. We're building support from across the political spectrum. A couple of examples, the Seattle Times in their editorial about the governor's policy said a revenue neutral approach would be both less financially risky and more politically viable. We have an endorsement from the Seattle Business Magazine. You can get a link to that on our website as well. And I want to emphasize something that's come up recently, which is the idea that carbon taxes are better than you think. Okay, so if we go back to this, I want to go back to a little bit of a high school mentality, right? There's a high school mentality that somehow says that carbon taxes might win sort of the most studious award, okay, but that they're never going to win most popular. It's got the T word in it. And there's even an argument that says that they're not even most likely to succeed, because there's this idea lately that I've seen that you need a carbon tax of $50 or $100 per ton of CO2 in order to really affect behavior. Our carbon tax starts at $15 and then $25 and then goes up slowly after that. Carbon taxes are better than you think. I want to give you one example of this. This is a model from the Energy Information Administration showing business as usual. Here's in blue, and this is for national electricity. Here's the effect of a $25 per ton of CO2 carbon tax, going up at 5% per year. A tremendous, tremendous impact from $25 per ton of CO2. Transportation, you might think, is a little bit of a harder nut to crack. That's true, but I have good news here too. This is the same EIA model. This is showing business as usual is in blue, and then the effect of a $25 per ton of CO2 carbon tax is in purple. Almost no effect. If you look at something locally, you get a similar result. So this is what the CTAM model. This is actual. The blue here is what actually happened in Canada over the last few years, and the purple is using the CTAM model to project what would happen what would have happened in Canada or in British Columbia if you'd had a $25 per ton of CO2 carbon tax. Now, British Columbia actually had a carbon tax. They implemented it in 2008. It's now $30 per ton of CO2, and we can actually see what happened in British Columbia and compare it to Canada as a whole. And here's what actually happened in British Columbia. Carbon emissions are down much more than the model projected. And I'm happy to talk about why during Q&A. There's some really neat economics papers about this. So for those of you who are here from the Evans School, the good news is the CTAM model was actually developed by a student at the Evans School a couple years ago as his Evans project, Kevin Mori. So the good news is that there's this model that was done by a student here at the Evans School, and this model it's kind of the primary model that folks use to look at the impacts of carbon policies in Washington State. It's been adopted to other states. So that's the good news, is that the work you do here can really make a difference. The bad news is that the model makes some mistakes. So get it right. And I know there are folks who are working on improving it. Okay, but what about polling? What about the political viability? So here's a poll that came out just in the last couple of weeks. They basically tested on our policy. And what they showed was, well, let me give you some numbers. Even among the GOP, right? Even among Republicans, we got almost 40%. That's not bad. Okay. Overall, we got close to 54%. That number's not great, but it's not terrible. All right, we have a chance. And I want to emphasize that among the 18 to 34-year-olds, we got almost 77% support. So this is ultimately going to end up on the November 2016 ballot, presidential year, important year that's going to bring out a lot of young voters. So that's part of the strategy for why we're targeting November 2016. So I started with a baseball metaphor about the relief pitcher. I'm going to end with a mixed baseball metaphor. We're going to take a swing at the ball. I'm not saying that this is easy. I'm saying that it's possible. We have a chance, and we should take advantage of that and go for it. Thank you very much.